Eddie George knocked off Southeast Missouri State for the biggest win of his coaching career, and it punched Tennessee State's ticket to the FCS playoffs. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. And if you're new to FanDuel, put down a $5 bet. If that wins, you get $150 back in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. Today's episode is obviously our afternoon session where we come on at 6:30 Central Time. Thank you for joining live if you are. If you aren't, thanks for joining not live. I don't care. I just appreciate you listen and you watch, right? We will not have one of these on Friday like we typically do. Typically, we come in Friday and do our game of the week. We probably won't even have a game of the week this week. We will do some sort of hybrid episode where we look at the Bayou Classic, Tennessee State's playoff game, Virginia Union and Miles playoff game. Spoiler alert, both of those teams won too. But we'll look at all of that probably Thursday morning. So if you're preparing to eat or you're preparing the food, hopefully you're listening to me while you do it. Either way. So I have more information on exactly how that will look no later than Wednesday. It'll probably be on Wednesday's episode. But today, we'll wrap up with a look at Miles College because their defense really did put them in a great position to win this game. And you got to give the game ball to them. The game ball of all game balls goes to RJ Rosales, though. He is my HBCU player of the week because of what he was able to do in the fourth quarter, coming in of relief for starting quarterback Mark Wright for Virginia Union. But I want to kick it off on the FCS level first and look at Tennessee State because Tennessee State, as a matter of fact, I'm going to call them TSU. I know I always be petty and I don't like doing it, but when you do what they've been able to do over the last month, specifically this past weekend, and accomplish what they've been able to accomplish this season, yeah, you get TSU status. My pettiness fades. It'll probably fade for the rest of the year, but next year we locked and loaded. Matter of fact, we probably locked and loaded for basketball season. So, but right now, you look at it, Eddie George just pulled off the biggest win of his career over Southeast Missouri. And I think it would have been that even without the stakes, because you look at them being the top team in the conference, they end up getting the automatic bid because of all the crazy freaking scenarios we had. Most of them benefited Southeast Missouri. So boom. But this was a huge win for Eddie George. And then when you look at what it got for him, it wasn't just recognition. It wasn't just, oh, we beat the top dog. It wasn't just feeling good. If you don't win this game, you do not make the playoffs. We talked about this recently, where you may still be on the bubble with 8 wins. Like, you'll still have a chance. But when you look at it, Blue Bloods did a great job tweeting this out, talked about how Tennessee State was one of the last 4 in. We're thinking like March Madness terminology lingo, right? So that means you were one of the last 4 teams to make it. You were right there on the bubble. If you go 8 wins, you're not going to be one of the last 4 in. You might be one of the first 4 out. And it's not just the fact that you got this win. It's a huge win for Eddie George because of who you beat. It's the top dog in your conference, and it showed, and it actually got you a piece of the co-championship. But all 4 of those teams who got co-Big South OVC titles did not make the playoffs. And because you were able to beat the 11th ranked team in the country, that's why you were able to punch your ticket. It was more than just beating Southeast Missouri. It was beating a ranked opponent, and you did it comfortably. The game was tight, but I thought that you did it quite comfortably, in my opinion. So that was a big deal. Who you beat, where they ranked. it all added up. Put it all in the gumbo, because that's the reason that you were able to make it into the FCS playoffs. It's the first time that this has happened for Tennessee State since 2013. So Eddie George comes in year 4. He ends this 11-year drought. And I think that honestly, if we're going to keep it big picture for right now, and then we'll go specifically into the game, big picture, they better not win no playoff game. Because if they do, the Big South OVC needs to watch out. Because if Tennessee State wins a playoff game and Eddie George is the head coach, you're going to have that NFL lineage. You're going to have people who want to come. They already want to show up for Eddie George. I don't think that he needs to show the ability to replicate this year after year after year. People are going to want to flock to a guy like George. Even when you just hear him talk, we got to get him on the show. First off, we got to get this man on the show. But when you hear him talk, he is a leader. You can tell. I even like his coaching style where it's not all of that in your face yelling. And I prefer that, man. Sometimes when coaches get to yelling and blah, 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 I was like, man, cool down, man. Cool down. There's a respect and there's a command of it. I think sometimes we look at that as the only way. And maybe being calm is a sign of weakness. It's not even a sign of weakness. It's a sign of, it is not a sign of strength. I think that's how people look at it. Oh, that's not strong. It might not necessarily be weak, but it's not strong. But you can sit there and tell there's a level of respect and there's a command of everybody on that field when he's there. I love the Stilo, man. I really do. And I think that if they're able to win a playoff game, you're going to see a lot of people flocking towards Tennessee State. You're going to get some, they're going to be a really good team in the Big South OVC for a couple of years. I really do feel that way. And I don't think Eddie George really cares to ascend up the coaching ranks. I don't think that's a thing for him because he didn't really want to coach anyway. So I can see him staying at Tennessee State for a while, for what that's worth. Now to this game, straight up. There's two things that I looked at. Two matchups. The first matchup was Tennessee State's secondary versus Southeastern Missouri's wide receiving core. And then the second one that we looked at was TSU's defensive line and their ability to penetrate the offensive line, specifically on run plays. I'll start with the latter because it wasn't running. It was Paxton Delorant. I think that's how you say his name, but I'm going to call him Paxton. He was running for his life. I don't think that the 3 sacks that TSU registered is a great indication of how much pressure that they had the quarterback under. He was rattled, and you could tell it. Then when he did get the ball off, this gets to our other storyline, our other matchup. They did a great job of attacking the football. They had 7 pass deflections. Only 1 came by a defensive lineman near the offensive line, right? So you're looking at 6 in the secondary. 1 came from Sanders Ellis, but that was in coverage still. So you're looking at the ability to stop these receivers. I would say there was a period of time in which SEMO was getting loose a little bit. They started getting some things going offensively, but it was too much. It was too little, too late, I should say, because the lead was too much. What Tennessee State was able to do, it hit immediately. Look, we're going to go ahead and get a touchdown this first drive. We're going to get a strip sack, return that for a touchdown. We're going to get another touchdown from C.J. Evans, right? Like, these were big plays. There was moments in which the Tigers shot themselves in the foot. They had a couple of missed field goals that really felt like, that's going to come back to bite them. Because I talked about you can't make these mistakes. I was saying you can't turn over the ball, and they didn't. They didn't turn over the ball, but these missed field goals felt like missed opportunities that will come back and hurt you later. And it didn't. It didn't. You got away with it. This was a really good game. This was a really good game by Tennessee State, especially on that secondary, because you have high-profile wide receivers. You have extremely productive wide receivers. And that secondary came to play. They were plastering wide receivers. There was nowhere to go on frequent downs. When you did throw it, a lot of times they were able to shoot hands through hands, right? So you have the receiver with his hands up trying to catch. And when the ball gets there, it wasn't just we're going to hit it before it gets there. Sometimes you got your hands on the ball, and Tennessee State did a good job of punching through. There was really good play at the catch point for Tennessee State secondary. TSU was going insane. And they opened up with a hot 21, like I said. Then Draylen Ellis came in late in the fourth quarter, or early in the fourth quarter, rather, and he led a touchdown drive. And that touchdown drive sealed it. You didn't know it at the time because it was so early, but that was all they needed. This was, I said it, man. I hated saying he needs to throw the ball less or they need to protect the football because I didn't want to make it seem like take the ball out of his hands. This guy's electric. This guy is a really good quarterback. I don't know where he ranks now on the Tennessee State all-time list, but I can guarantee you he's going to move up. He's going to move up. At the time that I seen it, he was 10th in TSU history. I projected he would go to 8. I would have to see where 6 is at, but he may creep in the top 5. He may creep in the top 5. I'll come back on our HBCU circuit. That would be how I will focus on Tennessee State, is what Draylen Ellis is able to do. That'll be the first thing I look at. But man, overall, I thought that TSU dominated the front line on defense. I thought they had Paxton Delorant running. I thought that the running game was meh at best. The secondary, when the ball did get off, they did a great job attacking. It was just a really strong defensive performance. I thought that the offense showed up in the first quarter. I thought they showed up at the end of the game. I thought they had some missed opportunities that make this game look a little different, right? Like, let's say you hit 34, let's say you hit 37 points. It's a different conversation, I would say, or 35, 38 points. It's a different conversation, but that's how well that they played. They just couldn't finish on a couple of opportunities, man. This was great. This was great by Tennessee State. Now let's look at the D2 ranks and kick it off with Virginia Union, because RJ Rosales is my player of the game, or player of the week, because of what he was able to do in the fourth quarter and what it meant for Virginia Union. Let's explore that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now listen, the NBA season is full in effect. We're looking at the NFL season. We're nearing the playoffs. We're past the halfway point. I think that the Chiefs are an interesting bet because they keep having close games. They had a close one against the Panthers. You probably lost money on that. Maybe you were just hesitant and you felt it wasn't your time. If you're one of those and you haven't tried out FanDuel yet, go ahead and go to FanDuel.com. This will be beautiful for you because they have a deal right now to where if your first $5 bet wins, you get $150 back in bonus bets. It's simple, it's easy, but it's also great money for you. So once you get there and you get that $150 back in bonus bets, you ain't never going to want to stop. Doesn't matter if it's the NHL, doesn't matter if it's boxing, doesn't matter if it's UFC, if it's NFL, if it's NBA. Go ahead and go to FanDuel.com and take advantage of all the offers and make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football. These things are getting interesting. Matter of fact, check them out and Locked On SEC. Because it's getting messy in that Southeastern Conference, okay? It's getting messy. I don't know what they're going to do with the playoffs. SEC is king in the FBS, but it's only so many games you can lose no matter what conference that you're in. That being said, one team that don't have to worry about that is Virginia Union. They bounced back in the CIAA championship game, knocked off Virginia State. Then they come in this week and they play Wingate. And you take a look at the bracket seeding. Union's the underdog in this game. Wingate comes in as the second seed. They were the 17th ranked team in the country per the AFCA poll. You're looking at a massive underdog that Virginia Union was. I don't know what the spread and the numbers and all of that was, but they walk in as a team that's not supposed to win. And then their quarterback goes down. The feed was a little choppy, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to see everything, so that kind of sucked. But it was going in and out, like it was going in and out, 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 in and out. But like, I kept up as much as I could. They said that the quarterback got hurt. I wasn't able to see it. I haven't been able to confirm it, but he wasn't having a bad day, so I don't know why they would just pull him. But whenever RJ Rosales got in the game, you were actually down. It was 26-21 Wingate. You're already in a higher scoring game than you probably wanted to be in, or maybe even thought that you'd be in. But it's 26-21 Wingate. And what RJ Rosales was able to do in that fourth quarter is why he's my HBCU player of the week. I don't care what other people did. I don't care that people had better stats than RJ Rosales because most of them played 3 more quarters than the backup quarterback. But when I look at what he was able to do in that fourth quarter with the stakes that were on the line, right? Jada Byers in the fourth quarter, they keyed in on him tremendously. He already had a modest game by his standards, but in that fourth quarter, he had over a handful of carries. He didn't even get a handful of yards. So they did a great job shutting him down. And you would think that with a backup quarterback and your star running back not lighting it up, oh, and you're already down, you're definitely going to lose that game. But RJ Rosales took matters into his own hand. And on two separate occasions in the fourth quarter, on a third or fourth and long, he ran. It was over 10 yards. RJ Rosales ran for the first down. On two separate occasions, it was fourth down. See, look, Jada Byers, they still stayed with him because, I mean, he's your guy. But it would get first down, second down, third down. Now you throw because it's third down and long. Third and 10 plus, incomplete. Fourth down, what do? Game is on the line. Two separate occasions. It's the last drive of the game. You got to have it. RJ Rosales went and got it 2 times with his leg. With his legs, he was able to go and get this first down on a pivotal drive. You end up pushing and you end up throwing a touchdown, You get to OT. He does it again. This time it's a third and long. And he runs from the 20-yard line down to the 1, and he doesn't score, but he pushes it in again. He pushes it in afterwards. So third down, OT. Oh, first off, regulation, fourth quarter, you do what you got to do. Jada Byers is being neutralized. It's all on you. You go ahead and take matters into your own hand. You run for the first down twice. You end up throwing the touchdown. Really good last-minute drive. You get into overtime. It's third and long. Very similar. You get the ball second. So you know that they already kicked the field goal. A touchdown wins it. Third and short this time. He takes matters into his own hands again. He runs it from about the 20-yard line down to the 1. Then he pushes it in afterwards. He gets the touchdown. So you're looking at RJ Rosales. I know he only has less than 100 total yards. I know he only has 2 touchdowns. There's somebody who has better numbers. There's somebody who has better numbers than RJ Rosales. But to me, the fact that it was a playoff game, the fact that he was a backup, the fact that his star player was being neutralized and he stepped in and stepped up and took that team to the next round, the stakes on the line, his positioning, his situation, context, all of those things are important. Of all those big performances, how many of them had the stakes that Virginia Union's game had? I don't think there's many. How many of them had to come in and be backups? How many of them it was counted out? RJ Rosales delivers them the victory, and he is my player of the week. Let's move into Miles College, man. Let's move into Miles College because I don't think there's too much to say here. They'll be back next week, right? So they have another playoff game, but as I said, we will talk about that on Thursday's episode. So it's not anything to get into right now. This is just very important. This is very, I don't know. I can't think of the word right now. I can't even think of what I'm trying to say, but basically impressive is probably what I was trying to say, but my mind went blank. But overall, this needed to be said. It needed to be highlighted because what he did as a backup quarterback should not go under the radar. Now let's look towards Miles. It wasn't backup quarterback play. It was strong defense. Also, shout out to Virginia Union's defense because despite them having 26 points going into the fourth quarter, Wingate having 26 points going into the fourth quarter, they didn't score again. They had a safety. I mean, but that's not defense. That's not their fault. They had a safety. They sacked Rosales. But other than that, they held them to 3. That fourth quarter in overtime, that was Rosales and the Virginia Union defense. That's how you were able to win that game. Virginia Union and Virginia Union's defense and RJ Rosales on offense. That led them to victory. Now let's look at Miles. They didn't have a backup quarterback, and they really didn't have too much offense. Instead, what they did have was a strong defense, and let's break that down as we continue and wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, and Game Time is the only place I go for all of my tickets. Doesn't matter if it's NHL, doesn't matter if it's the NBA, right? We have both of those in the local area or near the local area. Let's go ahead and kick it off with a little bit. Let's go to Game Time and let's look at what's around. It's Thanksgiving. The Cowboys are going to play in the AMA. You know what it is. Giants at Cowboys. Tickets right now start at $27. Black Friday. Avalanche versus the Stars. Start off at $61. You see what happens when the team's a little bit better, huh? SMU is actually doing better, but college games are different. That's Saturday. You get $19 for Cal coming to see SMU. You see this Kansas versus Baylor. I didn't even think Baylor would be here, but you look at it, you still have it. Like, these are games that, and they're $14. So you can just go through and use Game Time picks. They'll tell you exactly what you need, and they'll have games in your local area. And you look, Waco, not that close to me, and they still gave me that. So it's a little bit of range as well, but it's all up to you. You may not stay where I stay. I hope you're not in this very same place right now. That'd be kind of creepy. But still, look in your own local area. Check out Game Time picks, and when you do go to Game Time, use the code Locked On College. You get $20 off your first purchase. Download the app, create an account, use the code Locked On College. You get $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Game Time. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Here we go. Miles College versus Carson Newman. First off, I forgot to say something about this Wingate Virginia Union game. So let me say this. First off, Virginia Union's run started in 2022. This was the team, Wingate, that ended Virginia Union's big run. Okay, you fast forward a couple of years later, it's revenge for that. But also, Wingate been terrorizing HBCUs. They knocked off 20 HBCUs in a row, and they couldn't make it to good old lucky 21. They bust before they got there. All right, so that's what we have. I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that because a 20-game win streak against HBCUs needed to be noted. But more importantly, the ending of that streak needed to be noted. And also, a little bit of revenge for Virginia Union. Now to Miles, because Miles is a little bit more simple. The defense stood up. The defense stood up against Carson Newman. Just like Union, both of these teams got their first ever D2 playoff victory. So they had never had that happen in their team's history. This was Miles' third attempt at it. This is Virginia Union's third in a row. But, so the numbers and everything is similar. But Miles wasn't an underdog. They hosted this game. They were favorites. Like, they were supposed to win this game. They were the number, I think, 3 or 4. No, they were 4. I think they were the 4 seed. So we expected this from them. But this game was reminiscent of the first game of the year to me, right? It reminded me of that because West Alabama was the matchup. And in that game, it was very defensive. It was tight. And West Alabama ended up scoring a touchdown, kicking a field goal at the end of the game to win it. But there was no late game heroics here. There was no sort of, Miles had a heartbreaker. No, actually, Miles put up 14 points in the first half, and then they held on. They put up 14 points in that first half, and then they held on. A last-second field goal cost them 16-15 in that game. This time, you come up and you win this game by 2 points, right? So, 1 point. So instead of losing by 1, you win by 1, 14-13. There was a fourth quarter field goal, but didn't matter. Who cares, right? Carson Newman was 24th in the AFCA poll. Both of these squads knocked off a top 25 team. I think that's important to say because despite it being the playoffs and you kind of assuming all these teams were top 25, it adds a little bit of parsley to it, right? It makes it look a little bit better when you're looking at, you didn't just win a playoff game. You knocked off a top 25 team too. It's almost like, you didn't just win a playoff game in the NFL. You also beat a division winner. I think that's kind of what it feels like. It just adds a little bit of sauce to it. Defensively, it was a huge effort, man. There was a few drives where Carson Newman started to get off. There was a couple of drives where they drove down the field, one of which ended in a missed field goal. And then a one-score, 1-point game at that. A missed field goal matters a lot. A missed field goal is one of the most important aspects of all of this. So, to me, I can't give the defense enough credit. That last touchdown that Miles scored, 24-yard drive. Like, where do you think that comes from? That comes from the defense. That comes from them being able to make these plays. That comes from them being able to step up. That comes from them being able to do all of these things that, how do I want to phrase it? I want to make sure I phrase it the right way. They're doing these things to keep the game in control while the offense is not showing up. Because one thing in the West Alabama game is that Cameron Ivory, he still is putting yards up. This game, not so much. Nobody got to 100, not even the quarterback. Gennaro Scott, It's all right. Right? Like these are it's different. It's different when it comes to that, to me, at least. So this was a great game. I enjoyed it a lot. Miles, see you next week. Unfortunately, you got the number one team in that bracket. You got Valdosta State. I believe that's who it was, but your offense is gonna have to step up. Your offense is going to have to step up. Forcing fumbles, doing what you did defensively, that's going to be important. That could lead to everything you need, right? But if your offense only puts up 14 points, again, you're probably going to lose that game. So without limited, the offense was, I'll say that they needed that forced fumble to lead them to 14 points. You might not get that lucky. I'm going to keep it like that because I want to end on a good note. And I think Miles' defense played great. And sometimes you just have those slow games offensively. That happens. Hopefully next week is not one of those. But in the meantime, between time, we'll be back tomorrow. PV's got rid of Coach Bubba McDowell. I think that was crazy. I understand it a little bit. It was a crazy moment. And I don't know if it's a crazy decision. It will probably depend on who they get in response. But we'll see, and we'll look at that on tomorrow's episode. But in the meantime, between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.